What is to be believed and what is not about the rookie class of quarterbacks in the NFL draft? Drake Maye versus Daniels. JJ McCarthy, is he sneaking up all the way to the number 2 pick in the draft? And what about veterans Dak Prescott entering a walk year with the Dallas Cowboys? Is this his last ride? All that and more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We appreciate all the everydayers out there, and we always appreciate everyone who's subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Hit that thumbs up if you're enjoying the pod, and hit the notification bell so you know when a new episode is live on YouTube. You can always get those mailbag questions in on Twitter at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL, or in the YouTube comments as well. We're talking quarterbacks today, but I want to let everybody know that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right. An interesting nugget that we haven't had a chance to talk about. We've been doing a lot of draft rankings. We're going to get into the defensive side of those NFL draft rankings next week, Matt. But I want to finish today talking about some of the quarterbacks. And it's always the biggest topic, and it's going to be the biggest topic in the NFL world over the next month. 3 weeks now as we get ready for the NFL draft. It is coming. It is almost April. This note from Tom Pelissero from the owners' meetings about what's going on at the top of the draft, what he's hearing. He's a very plugged-in guy. He knew the results of the new rules voting before everyone else in the world did. So, he's a plugged-in guy, and he's someone to listen to on subjects such as this. He said on NFL Network during the owners' meetings, Matt, that when asked about Cliff Kingsbury's offense, what's the good fit there outside of Caleb Williams for the Washington Commanders at pick number 2. And Tom Pelissero said, quote, "The most popular answer from executives for what they do," meaning the Washington Commanders, at number 2 is JJ McCarthy. Has JJ McCarthy moved all the way up to the number 2 pick in the NFL draft, man?
All right. So we are approaching Easter weekend. I hope everyone has a wonderful Sunday with their fam or whatever. I always go to my aunt and uncle's, and we start with a Bloody Mary bar for brunch, which is awesome. And it brings me to this story, So my son is now a junior in high school. He's very logical, and as a young pup, and you might be dealing with this soon with your son BP, he came up to me when he was maybe 7 or 8 or younger than most would have had this realization and said, "Dad, do you really expect me to believe that a 6-foot bunny comes hopping through our house while I'm asleep and distributes all sorts of treats for us? I mean, is that what you're selling me here, Dad?" Which quickly led to him saying Tooth Fairy, others, I'm not going to break any kids' hearts here of other folks that bring you things. And I'm wondering, this is lying season, embellishing season, it's Easter Bunny season, like, am I on board with that? And I will say, I just left the owners meeting, and 2 different people that were at Michigan's Pro Day, unsolicited, said, "Wow, was that kid impressive?" And I hate pro days for quarterbacks. I mean, like, the ball should never hit the ground. It's scripted, blah, 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 blah. But the way he carries himself, the way he organizes things, he played at only a little over 200 pounds. And I think he was 220 at the combine and 219 at his pro day. So maybe he's actually holding good weight.
Yeah, kept the weight on.
Yeah.
It's about checking boxes. It's not about how good they look in shorts in this pre-programmed routine that they're going to throw at. You want to see the ball come out of their hands. I think that's important, and compare these players. But the pro day stuff and the whole circuit there, I think it's more about hands-on, eyes-on, how a player's wired, checking boxes than it is the wow throws that we see everybody make now, where you're rolling left, throwing back right.
Now back to McCarthy. I mean, even if you watch Sunday or Saturdays, casually, you might have to watch more tape than a Penix or somebody like that to find those throws. But he'll gun it over the middle against zone coverage in a tight window and on 3rd and 8 or whatever. And I bring up 3rd and 8 on purpose because red zone, 3rd down, blitz. I mean, all the situational reels that quarterback coaches will start watching and watch first, he thrives. And I bring up coaches for a reason too, because much like Harbaugh, I don't need him to win my fantasy league. I want to win the national championship. And situationally and control of the game and quarterback stuff is what he does best. And now coaches are involved.
Yeah, that was a great quote from his former coach, Jim Harbaugh, about JJ McCarthy is the best quarterback at doing quarterback things.
Is that what he said?
That's what you're looking for, right? You're quarterback. You need him to play quarterback. You don't need him to play pro day.
Exactly. So quarterback coaches and offensive coordinators around the league, let alone Sean Payton, I'm just talking about offensive-minded head coaches, are going to start breaking this kid down, and you can see his stock rising. I can't see him as a second overall player, but I could see 4 quarterbacks in a row coming off the board.
I think we should start to get a pretty good inkling of what's going to happen at pick number 2, because there's less of a reason to keep it secret, because we kind of know exactly what's going to happen at pick number 1.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this way a few years ago, speaking of pro days, and people had great pro days, and, Zach Wilson, everyone kind of knew Zach Wilson was going number 2 by this time.
Yeah.
Pro day. And so it was like, okay, the draft starts at 3 now when the 49ers traded up there, but everyone knows who 1 and 2 is going to be. I could see that start to be the case, and we start to hear, okay, we kind of know who number 2 is. We haven't yet, which is really interesting, which tells me they're probably keeping it pretty quiet, and maybe they don't even know and haven't had that meeting yet to really lock that in for the second pick in the 2024 NFL draft.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you're right. It is lying season, and it could be JJ McCarthy. It could be Jayden Daniels. It could be Drake Maye. Maybe they would even trade out of that. I have no idea what to expect with this team at number 2 right now, but I don't think they're telling anybody either. And most of these teams are definitely not telling anybody if keeping that a secret helps your organization. So we can't trust these reports about what team likes what player, because it doesn't help you to put that out there. And I always go back to, and so I have had some listeners on Locked On 49ers, and I'm doing mock drafts talking about the 31st pick in the draft, and a lot has to happen in front of the 49ers, right, to instruct you on what you could possibly do with that pick. And I'll get comments like, well, there's no way that someone doesn't trade up or draft Bo Nix and Michael Penix at the end of round 1. And I'm thinking, like, how short is your memory? Do you remember 2 years ago when the week before the draft and reputable organizations and analysts, like ESPN mock draft had Malik Willis going number 2 overall to the Detroit Lions a week before the draft, and he went in the 3rd round. So there was ESPN Analytics. I just saw this note yesterday. ESPN Analytics last year had Will Levis as a 92% chance of being drafted in the top 10, and he
top
wins.
10.
Yeah, top 10.
Trading up on day 2 to get him. Yeah, no one in the round 1 was ready to take him, but then there was competition to get him at the top of round 2. It's a couple things there. As you mentioned, there's been drafts where we know the top 2 picks, like go back to Goff and then, Wentz. And back in the day, you could even sign the 1st overall pick, and then it's obviously going to happen. Or maybe we didn't know if it was going to be Leaf or Peyton Manning, but we knew number 2 was going to be the other guy. I do think that's coming soon for Washington, and I don't believe Washington is in the trade down market. I mean, the way they address free agency, this doesn't sound like much, but if you're going to spend money in that organization on a guy like Zach Ertz, well, that's just like a leader for your young quarterback. You know what I mean? It's not to win now. It's not going to put you over the top, but it's just to kind of make a friendly environment for your young quarterback. They're going to draft a quarterback.
You're trying to have veterans that can, complete a job now to instruct what the organization is trying to do going forward.
Right. Be a facilitator, change the culture,
Let's talk a little bit more about fits and see if we can figure out and sleuth what would potentially be going through the minds of some of these GMs making these decisions at the top of the draft. Jayden Daniels versus Drake Maye versus JJ McCarthy now. And Bo Nix versus Michael Penix in that second wave of quarterbacks in the draft. And what about Dak Prescott? Is this his last ride as a Cowboy. Next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook because right now new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. And there's more and more draft props coming all the time at FanDuel. They've got all the team-specific draft props now for your favorite team at FanDuel. Who's going to be the #2 pick in the draft as we're talking about today? Jayden Daniels leading Drake Maye narrowly. JJ McCarthy third there. What about the third pick? It's flipped. It's Maye, then Daniels, then McCarthy. Marvin Harrison, 9-1. Interesting with the third pick as well. You can find all those odds at FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, here we go. If you were betting, actually, now that we bring that up about the #2, #3 pick, would it be Daniels? Would it be Maye? Would it be JJ McCarthy for you, Matt?
I would bet it's Daniels, and I think that's somewhat close to a lock at this point.
Interesting.
I think Maye's the better prospect. So I don't want to go down too deep an alley here, but the more I think about quarterback prospects, and I love to pat myself on the back and go back in time and be like, I thought Lamar was the best quarterback in his draft. I thought Mahomes was the best quarterback in his draft. I've had plenty of misses too, don't get me wrong, but I like to bring those up because they weren't, I mean, and they weren't close to being consensus at the time. But my logic then and my logic now is even stronger because guys like Mahomes and Lamar did hit that if I'm taking a quarterback high, I think it's all about upside. You're like, I hate the opposite. I hated Josh Allen coming out of school. And I thought I was so right after a year or two in the league. I'm like, this guy can't hit the broadside of a barn. But all I care about now with quarterbacks is if I was a team, I want to swing for the fences like Dave Kingman. I mean, swing out of my shoes for the fences.
For the kids out there who don't know, Dave Kingman, former 6'5" baseball player who struck out all the time, but he was trying to put it in the upper deck.
Yeah, and he often would. I mean, be near not the fleetest of foot. He's not stealing bases for you, So anyway, I want to be Dave Kingman at the plate, swinging for quarterbacks, coupled with patience. And that's the Josh Allen thing. Like a team or two could have gotten off of Josh Allen. Like, this guy can't play. But if you're going to swing for the fences with obscenely talented players, you have to be patient.
Love the baseball reference. Opening day yesterday, Matt.
I guess so, yeah.
Major League Baseball. I'm pumped on it. I love me some baseball as well. April's the best month for me. It's April and October. Weather's great. Spring, fall. You get the tournament. You get Major League Baseball. You get the NFL draft in April. In October, you got NFL football. You got the World Series. I love it. Those are my 2 favorite months of the year. So I'm
Easter Bunny comes and sees you.
The Easter Bunny, yeah. Maybe we'll show up at pick #2 in this NFL draft. If we're doing the odds thing, better odds for Maye, I'm taking that with pick #2. I do think Daniels fits better at 2 offensively with Cliff Kingsbury. I think if Daniels doesn't go 2, I could see a tumble. I think Daniels is the one that could tumble in this versus what we think, because I could see the Patriots. It's a timing-based offense. It's that West Coast. It's the Shanahan tree thing. That's where they're at. Maybe a little bit less so than even the Minnesota Vikings if they're moving up. I don't think they're moving up for Jayden Daniels. They might move up for Maye. They might move up for McCarthy. It sounds a lot like they really like McCarthy. By the way, speaking of, this came from the actual coach. Was it the coach or the GM? There was an interview with, I think it was Kevin O'Connell of the Minnesota Vikings. They have Justin Jefferson. And the question was put this way. You got one JJ. He's about to make a lot of money in your locker room. Is there enough room for another JJ? And his quote was, I don't know if you've been over to blah, blah, blah facilities, whatever that's called there in Minnesota. I don't know if you've been to our facilities, but there's room for a lot of JJs in that locker room. So they do have room for another JJ. So
it's like the nicest facility in the NFL, by the way.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
I know it's a newer facility and put some money into that thing. And so Yeah, I mean, that's maybe just the coach having fun, but maybe he tipped his hand a little bit there. So we'll see.
I mean, that's a former quarterback that's a head coach, and quarterback does quarterback things,
Timing based offenses. I
Yep.
don't think, because Jayden Daniels' scout report, a lot of people compare him to Lamar Jackson, and
Yeah, I
skinny,
don't.
fast, good arm. I could see that comparison. I don't think he's Lamar Jackson. One of the things Lamar Jackson was great at is not getting hit while he's running. Jayden
That's a
Daniels,
big one.
he's got like a highlight reel of just getting absolutely blown up. He's got to figure out how to not get hit with his skinny frame in the NFL. Doesn't throw over the middle with timing as much as some quarterbacks would want in some offenses. So, it's similar to Justin Fields. And again, I love Justin Fields coming out, swing for the fences on those abilities. And if it's a fit for your offense, sure. And I like that at number 2 more than 3, more than maybe some other offenses in the NFL. So Daniels, I like with the Giants, and Washington for McCarthy. I do see it with the Minnesota Vikings. I don't know about spending 3 first-round picks to get all the way up into the top 5 to do so. Drake Maye, I think, could be a fit kind of both ways in all those offenses. So to be honest with you, I have no idea how to really make my own odds on what I think is going to happen with these, except for just to use my own eyes. And I tend to think that it's going to end up being what we kind of thought originally all along, and it's going to end up going Williams, Maye, Daniels, and then JJ McCarthy at some point. But again, I think it depends on team. And I think there's fewer teams just because so many teams in the NFL run that Shanahan tree timing-based offense. I don't think Daniels is going to be a fit for everybody.
I hear you. So I keep going back to this, and I think there is an art to isolating the quarterback on tape. But if you gave Maye or Williams, Daniels or McCarthy situation, this may not even be a conversation. You know what I mean? Especially
Right.
Maye. I mean, Williams, we know, is one. He's thrown to 2 first-round receivers, and I guess their line's one of the best in the league. They get a bunch of guys next year. They're going to get drafted. Michigan's loaded. Real quick on Daniels versus Lamar. Here's the differences to me is they're both very dangerous runners. And I get that. And they're both wiry builds. But I think Lamar is much stronger. I always call him wiry, strong like a thin wire that bends but doesn't break. And I think his vision as a runner is so much better. So I heard Nate Tice one time talking about, give me a comparison for Jalen Daniels. They were looking for comps. And he said, Johnny Knoxville. He just takes so many hits, and he's skinny as could be. Scares the heck out of me.
Yeah, and he holds the ball a long time, which has been the death knell for a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL. And it's not, again, in the end, all these quarterbacks, who do you believe in from the neck up? Who's got that maniacal work ethic to get everything?
I think that's the McCarthy thing.
And I think that's why he's rising up boards right now.
Yeah. See, but I think Maye is the wild card that I mentioned before, is the Josh Allen. That guy, he's going to go down swinging. I mean, it takes forever for him to give up. He's the most competitive guy out there. He's maybe the most talented guy out there.
I like that he's, it's the old touchdown to check down thing. He's trying to find that big play if he can find it.
Oh, there's Dave Kingman there. You know what I mean? That's why I'm warmed up to Maye. Everyone seems to kind of be forgetting about him. I just love his style of play. I mean, he is going to fight. He's super talented. He might be the best athlete on here, including Daniels. I mean, Daniels is fast, but he's not as athletic and balanced, and
he's not as big. So that's, mass is a big part of the overall athletic picture. If you're looking at relative athletic score and things like that, Daniels is clearly faster, but Maye's a really good athlete, and he's not quite Josh Allen as far as size and athleticism and arm and those things. But that's the archetype that Maye is.
So the other thing about Maye is being around the Steelers, like anyone would tell you in that locker room that spent one of the 18 seasons with Ben Roethlisberger, that if no one in that locker room had ever bowled before or played darts before, Ben would be the best from the beginning. You know what I mean? And that's Drake Maye. His whole family has this extensive athletic background, great at baseball. I mean, he'd be great at volleyball. He'd be great bobsledder. He'd be great at anything. And I think there's something to that, especially with quarterback positions, because they're so competitive and they're so naturally talented, hand-eye, speed, everything. It doesn't matter what sport they play.
I think the most fun scenario is the Williams is going 1. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
Drake Maye 2. Patriots don't like Daniels.
I think they get out and should get out.
They either trade out there, then you see the JJ McCarthy trade come over the top, or the Patriots just stay there, don't get the offers they want, and end up drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. there. And then you see madness ensue, and then Daniels ends up with the New York Giants, and the Vikings do come up to 5 maybe, or for
maybe
JJ,
like the Raiders trade up and sell the farm. You know what I mean?
Denver's a big part of all this, and I think Denver, with the comments that Sean Payton made about being able to move up, he's like, yeah, we could do that. And so would they throw down enough to get where they need to go to maybe go get JJ McCarthy, who'd be a nice fit? Bo Nix, we've talked about his fit potentially in Sean Payton's offense. Let's talk Nix versus Penix and Dak. Dak's in a walk year. Is he done with the Dallas Cowboys after this season? Going to get paid somewhere. Next. A reminder to everybody out there to check out the new Locked On Sports Today channel, streaming 24/7 news analysis on the entire sporting world. And if you're someone who's watching Fox Sports or ESPN all day long on your TV and you have to turn it down because they're just shouting at each other with fake debates all day long, make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings all the analysts from the network. Matt Williamson and Brian Peacock will be on Locked On Sports Today all the time talking about the NFL, and it is free 24/7 streaming on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to it there and on the free Fire TV channels app on Amazon Fire, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and it's coming to more TVs, smart TVs near you, by the way. Your team every day. I think I have a better feel with Michael Penix and Bo Nix than I do the top 4 quarterbacks, Matt.
I like your take on this. Take it away, please.
The 3 quarterbacks after Williams. Williams is 1, and I think that's done. The other 3, I have no idea. At some point in the first round, they're going to go. Nix and Penix are interesting to me. Penix, by the way, did you see his pro day running somewhere between high 4.4s to low mid 4.5s, which is pretty good for Penix because he's not a runner.
Doesn't add up to me at all.
The scouting report on him is like, he's lead-footed, just stays in the pocket. Some teams are going to like it because he could throw from the pocket. He was smooth. It didn't look like he was moving, but he was moving, and he might have ran somewhere around a 4.5 flat in his 40-yard dash. It was a little bit surprising. He's got a good arm. I like Michael Penix. There's ACL injuries in his past. There's, he's an older prospect, but where Penix goes, and I do think he goes 5th, and he goes ahead of Nix and potentially way ahead of Nix. In my opinion, he should. Maybe he's into the first round. Maybe he's top of the second round. But Bo Nix is interesting because we've made the connection. You and I both have. And I think he's a nice fit for, say, Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos. But in my opinion, Bo Nix is the type of guy that people are forcing into their mock drafts and trying to figure out where he's going to go. And he does end up going to the Denver Broncos, but in round 3 instead of round 1. Like, that's where I think Bo Nix goes in this draft. And every single year, there's that prospect that that goes, that you think is going to go high and doesn't. So we really have no idea. Bo Nix is the one to me that I'm not buying teams drafting him in the first round being like, this is the future of our franchise. I think teams are going to draft him in a spot where, well, maybe he's a high-end backup, but he might be a big-time starter, played a lot of football, can maybe compete right away. So Denver Broncos round 3, not round 1 for Bo Nix, and I've got Penix going ahead of him.
Okay. Yeah, you said this off the air, and I've been thinking about it since, and I certainly can understand that. I mean, this Penix Pro Day thing has blown me away a little bit. I mean, just watching him, I thought he's a 4.8 guy, and even like his jumps were good. And he does not come across as an explosive athlete whatsoever. But he is a gunslinger in terms of throwing the football. And maybe if you go back and watch the tape more and say, okay, there's moments of athleticism I didn't see the first time around. And that would make him more of a Dave Kingman swing at the plate, considering the passing skills and all that. So I'm interested in that. I could also see with the way you laid it out, like, is Nix more of a Desmond Ridder than he is, like, good player, but no one's going to say that's going to take us over the top. So that's day 2,
Right. And there's more tape on Bo Nix than any quarterback prospect of all time. So you better get that one right because like he's been at multiple colleges. He's played a ton for a ton of different teams and different offenses.
Most starts in
different people
NFL
around
history.
him. Yeah. Most starts ever, right?
Most starts in NCAA history. So I wanted to say that actually start the show. I mean, between Daniels, Penix, and Nix, they've played almost 2 decades of college football. Like
Crazy,
that's good
yeah.
and bad. Like you better be getting better. If you're not peaking now, that really worries me. But I also think sometimes I have enough to go off of that. Maybe I can't squeeze that much more out of you,
And I see both sides of it because experience helps you. That experience in college, if you play a lot of football, that translates to the NFL. And it's hard for guys who don't play a lot of ball to develop quickly in the NFL as
it
a
could go
quarterback.
sour very quick.
Difficult, right? But at the same time, JJ McCarthy, with Bo Nix was like a big name on the scene in college football. But Penix, nobody knew who Michael Penix was when he was JJ McCarthy's age. He was at Indiana. Some people knew who Jayden Daniels was because he kind of burst on the scene as a freshman at Arizona State and then kind of disappeared for a few years and then had one good year, great year, Heisman Trophy winner to finish up his career at LSU. But in between, it was like, I don't know, this is not a first round guy. So that's really a hard thing for me to wrap my head around, in that what's more important, being good quicker or having a ton of experience? Because ideally you would like to have both.
It goes back to my thing about I just want the guy with the most upside, with the most untapped potential, with the highest ceiling, because I have to beat Josh Allen and Burrow and Lamar and all these guys. Maybe I'm scarred a little because Pickett's not close to that guy, but I'm swinging for the fences, and I just worry about those 6-year guys, that their profile is too far written.
An interesting quote out of the owners' meetings about Dallas Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott. Could this be the end for Dak Prescott with the Dallas Cowboys? And you don't see quarterbacks very often just become straight up free agents. The last time we've seen it was twice in a row with Kirk Cousins, and he changed teams both times, right? Just being a straight up, you're a starting quarterback in the NFL, you're a free agent. And the team that didn't re-up you before your contract is over didn't keep you in most of these cases. And Dak Prescott's going into his walk year with the Dallas Cowboys. And owner Jerry Jones said, and this is via Ian Rappaport, who said that the Cowboys and Dak have a mutual understanding of his contract situation. I hope they do, because it's signed and it's it's out there. We know what his contract is. Sources say no offers from Dallas despite him in a contract year. Owner Jerry Jones said, quote, "We are where we are, locked and loaded for this year. No indication the deal is coming." That sounds like a guy who's not going to be a Dallas Cowboy next year. They got to pay Micah Parsons. They got to pay CeeDee Lamb too. Are they building a nest for the next quarterback in Dallas? And how much is Dak going to make? Because if you let him get to free agency and try to sign him, that's going to cost you more than if you tried to sign him right now.
So I was double checking this while you were saying that, because I had to make sure I was correct. So MVP voting this year, Lamar got 49 of 50 first place votes and ended up with 493 points, ran away with the award. Josh Allen was the only other one that got a first place vote. Dak Prescott, though, was second in league MVP votings this year. I mean, he was second. Come on. I know he didn't finish the season particularly strong. Him and Herbert and a couple of these guys are getting this choker label, which I think is way, way, way too harsh. But I'm open to the idea maybe he can't win the big one. Maybe not. And it's also a DiMaggio Mantle Yankee center fielder thing, that he's not Aikman, he's not Staubach. Romo went through this too. That you're not the best Cowboys quarterback of all time, but he's definitely a top 8 quarterback. He's so much better above the neck than anyone tends to ever give him credit for. His athleticism started to come back after a gruesome ankle injury last year. He could be my quarterback. I think he is the definition of a Mike Sando tier 2 quarterback. He's not a 1. He's not a superhero. He's not Josh Allen, but he is going to be the highest paid player in the league soon, whether it's Dallas or not.
it's way too far ahead. But I was just, while you were speaking, I was like, oh, okay, where's the fit? Maybe things flame out for both the quarterbacks, the cheap quarterbacks that the Pittsburgh Steelers have.
It's been brought up. Yeah.
Like, it's hard to have that much money on hand to pay a 50, 60 million. Like, how much is he going to make on the open market if multiple teams are trying to fix their franchise with one big signing and get that quarterback?
Can they still franchise him though?
No, and he cannot be franchise tagged.
Okay, I thought there was something about that.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I meant to say that he cannot be franchise tagged, so he will be a free agent if they don't re-sign him.
Wow. I mean, I wonder. Like, I think they're better than this, but what if their season doesn't go well? Does he get traded at the trade deadline? You know, like that would be massive too. Like, if you're not going to give him 50 or 60, you better get some more than a third round comp pick out of Dak Prescott.
Could he be traded before the draft or during the draft?
Yeah. I mean, if you were the Vikings.
What about that? The Vikings can't get up, and now they're in a place where, man, they don't know what to do. But then what do the Cowboys do? They trade Dak to the Vikings and then draft Michael Penix with one of those 3 first-round picks they have now, or I don't know, 2 first. I have no idea what you would even get for Dak Prescott. You would ask for number 11. Would you get number 11? Would you get 2 firsts? He's going to be a free agent. You got to pay him a ton of money.
I mean, Minnesota just didn't pay Cousins, who hit the open market. I think Dak's better, but they might not be the right team, considering they could have kind of done this without any ramifications. But if I'm them, I might rather have Dak right now for that first round pick straight up, as opposed to McCarthy at 3 or 4 for both of them and a future pick.
Yeah, as long as you can pay him.
Plus $50 million.
Right. As long as
and there's this $50 million check yet, right? Right. I don't know.
Interesting.
I don't think it'd be short on suitors at all. Raiders?
I doubt the Cowboys would do that. Letting him become a free agent is one thing, but you get a lot more from him now. Like, if you're building this thing long term, you have the long view of it.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe they're just trying to figure out salary caps because they've done nothing in free agent. Like, money is an issue right now.
Well, the huge problem is
an issue.
They got to pay Parsons and Lamb.
Right.
And maybe you can't pay the 3 and you chose the other 2. I can understand that logic.
And the only way to have all of them together one more run is to let Dak walk and just play it out
after the year. Yeah, maybe.
You resign Dak, you're saying goodbye to one of the other guys.
Mm-hmm. I understand it. I mean, I got to give it more thought, but I mean, it's something that's going to be looming out here maybe for the next 10 months.
No end to the quarterback intrigue as we hit April here in the NFL calendar. I love it. Can't wait for the NFL draft. Can't wait for more information. And I'm still doing work trying to figure out exactly how I feel about this quarterback class and the most difficult position to figure out of all of them. Who's going to hit, who's going to not, who's going to change their franchise forever, good or bad, in April. I love it. Thanks, everybody, for making this your first listen. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Matt and I back Monday. More rankings. We're going to the defensive side for the NFL draft. Talk to you then right here. Peacock and Williamson.